So, should you go on working through your treatment? I had something in my mind that I was determined that it was going to have as little impact on my life as possible. I don't know if that was a good thing or not, but initially when I was diagnosed, I was just told that I would have to have surgery and then some radiotherapy. So that was quite a short period of time. They would have scheduled a surgery for within a week or two of me coming back from holiday, and then after about 4 weeks I'd have 3 weeks of radiotherapy, and that would be it. But when I came back from my holiday and I had the full test results, they told me I was HER2 positive and I would need chemotherapy, as I've mentioned before. And that did put a bit of a different complexion on it. So I had spoken to my employer when I was first diagnosed, and they said, "That's fine, whether you work or not, we will pay you," which was an amazing thing to do. But they did at that point think it was going to be something like 10 or 12 weeks, and it turned out to be much longer. So I felt, because I'd only been in that job for 6 months when I'd been diagnosed, that I needed to at least earn enough to cover my salary. I didn't want there to be a burden on my employer. They were being really good with me about it all. So we sat down and we talked about the cycle, that with the chemotherapy I would be away for almost a week, and then I'd be back for 2 weeks. So with the type of work that I did, which was residential conveyancing, I was a type of lawyer, and obviously you're very hands-on. You need to be there for the clients to give them support, because moving house, I used to say, is not life or death, like being a doctor, but your clients, when they move in house, do feel like it's life or death, and they need your support. So I needed to know that on the times when I wasn't there, that there would be somebody to carry it forward and look after them. And fortunately my employer said, "We'll do that. When you leave on the Wednesday to go, then hand over your files as if you were going on a holiday with file notes." I would give them to one of the directors and she would manage it with the help of other colleagues. And then I would come back when I was ready, take the files back, I'd have notes on what progress that had been made, and I would carry on. And the other thing that I needed to do was to tell my clients, the new clients that were coming along, what I was going through and that I wouldn't be there. I didn't want somebody making excuses, not explaining why I was absent, because that just is put down then to not being very professional. So that was another obstacle to overcome, and I was amazed that the clients, new people that were new clients to me that didn't even know me, still wanted to use my services even though I was going to be absent for 1 week in 3. And for the most part it worked quite well. But obviously everybody's job is different, so you need to look at whether there is someone there to take up the slack when you're absent, and if you were poorly for longer, that they could continue with your work. The other thing is you need to know that you'll be physically strong enough. So if you've got a physical job which involves lifting and carrying, and that you're on your feet all day, it might not be practical at all to keep working, because you will be tired and you need your energy to help to deal with the treatment. So think of that as a factor. Obviously, there are financial implications. Not everyone's boss is going to say, "We'll pay you your full wage whether you work or not." And if you end up just having sickness pay, then that's not going to pay the bills. So those are factors to take into account. It might be that you say, well, I just won't work while I'm having the chemotherapy, but then I will go back to work before I have my surgery, or the other way around. Um, and I did work as well through the radiotherapy, which after chemotherapy, radiotherapy is a lot easier. Um, so I was able to have a session in the morning, which they're quite quick, and then go to work afterwards, or the other way around. But you've got to be honest with yourself. Um, you might be concerned as to whether your job would be available if 9 months of your life is taken up with this treatment and you decide not to work any of it. Is your job still available? So I would say get some advice, get legal advice. Um, Generally, you cannot be dismissed for having cancer, and your job should be there for you at the end of it. But if you get that advice before you make a decision about whether to work or not, then you'll know what's going to happen. And if you know what the implications are of stopping working, if you get part way through your treatment and you think, I can't do this anymore, then you'll know where you stand. In my case, it worked most of the time, but I must say I was quite emotional under the surface. So under the layer of makeup and the wig, I was sort of just about keeping it together. Sometimes more than others. Other times I could laugh and sing, and not that I sang around the office much, but I was perkier. But if things don't go to plan, then the tears will flow. Is there somewhere you can go privately, or hopefully if you have your own office you can just shut the door and let those tears out and dab your eyes, and wear waterproof mascara while you've still got lashes, and when you haven't, then it's not a problem. So all of these things, I don't regret working. What I would say I regret is that I didn't have a wing woman or person to help me over the difficult parts. So I worked all the way through, and my workload was just enough to get me through and do what I had hoped. But then once I'd had my surgery, and I did go back after 6 days, which is a bit soon and a bit tricky, but once I'd had the surgery and I started getting more work in because I was going to be there full time, my workload increased really quickly, to such an extent that I really did need an assistant, and there wasn't scope for that in the position. So that took its toll, and I finished my radiotherapy just before Christmas, 21st of December. Had a couple of weeks off then for Christmas and went back in the new year. And within a couple of weeks, it was obvious that I wasn't just going to bounce back into the person I was pre-treatment, that it had taken its toll. And I needed someone that I could just say, oh, can you ring this person for me, and can you deal with that? And I wasn't able to have that. So just think about what can be offered to you. The other thing is, if you are around people, if your job involves meeting the public, then that can be tricky, because there will be times when you actually feel better, but your immunity is at its lowest ebb during the 3-week cycle. So you won't want to shake hands or be particularly close to them. But of course now, wearing a mask and having hand sanitizer is the norm. So if you've got that available in work, you may not need to worry so much about contact with people, particularly once the COVID-19 has passed, which obviously we're all hoping it will. I think that's all of the things that I need to talk about. Your case will be really individual, but I was really glad that I managed to work that time financially. That was a great help to us, and even though I stopped working when I did, our finances had changed, and I was able to then take a long leave of absence.